On a recent Instagram reel of mine, someone commented, "Shut up, you're old and irrelevant." I mean, they're half right. But here's the thing, I'm a way better rider now than I was when I was young. Hooning around on a Z250, falling off, laughing about it, being so obnoxious I should have been injected with something lethal. And now I ride slow, for thousands of kilometres, in multiple countries. I still laugh, I fall off way less than I used to, and I'm a far better rider as an older bloke. How is that irrelevant? G'day, I'm David from Two Wheels In. I rode for a year in 1991. I was 24. I have no footage of it, partly because action cameras didn't exist at the time and partly because there's no way you're seeing it. I rode a 1981 Z250 on L plates, way too fast, with terrible gear. It got me to late night gigs and to my day job selling pianos. It was fun, I was stupid. This is the only photo that survives of it, thank God. Then one day, working on a mate's farm, rounding up some sheep, I put the front wheel of the Z250 down a rabbit hole and went over the handlebars. I broke my collarbone. I was lucky not to break more actually, but it took me out of gigging for 6 weeks, which financially hurt. But in a way, I was lucky. If I'd kept riding as I did, I wouldn't be irrelevant, I'd be dead. So the bike, undamaged from its encounter with the Australian Peter Rabbits, got sold, and I bought a car. Everyone has a version of that young idiot, doing something badly and stupidly and dangerous. This was mine. Now get this, the fear of not being able to play for 6 weeks kept me as a cager for decades. Going to work in a car, teaching, coming home in a car, watching terrible television. That was my life for more than 2 decades. I almost went back to riding in 2014. I'd just spent 3 months in Delhi, and we all know the amazing Indian riding scene. I was going to buy a Royal Enfield Bullet 500 and ride it to the uni. The cool academic arriving in leathers and ego. And then came a fairly common story for riders who return. Divorce, sadness, riding as therapy, and rebirth. And along came a surprisingly better motorcyclist. I bought a friend's Virago 250 and got my learner's permit again. When I got back on, I thought I'd have no problems getting behind the handlebars again. And I was okay. Everyone assumes a 25-year gap is a deficit. All that stuff you'll have to relearn. But I found the relearning pretty straightforward. Clutch, countersteering, where your head goes before a lane change. That's just motor memory. It comes back quickly, just like the bicycle cliche says. But the gap gave me something else. I no longer had that young person ego, that belief in my own invincibility. All the dangerous bits. Speed is the whole point, luck mistaken for skill, riding for whoever was watching. That nonsense was gone because 24-year-old me no longer existed at 50. Time had already deleted that bravado. What I had to relearn, how to change gears and so forth, was actually fairly small. What I got to unlearn, which is basically everything else that made me a terrible motorcyclist, was an enormous opportunity. I've had a few years to think about this. Why am I a better rider now than I was at 24? My reflexes aren't as sharp, I'm not as strong as I used to be. I go to the shed and forget why I've gone down there. But I have 3 advantages that make me a better rider than the 24-year-old buffhead. The young me thought he was immortal, which is exactly why he was dangerous. At 59, I know what the stakes are. 1 lapse of attention, 1 beer too many, 1 idiot cager checking his Tinder messages, and my small existence is snuffed out like that. So I pay attention. I give the car ahead lots of space. I don't race down the twisties like a crazy person, precisely because I'm aware of the consequences. At 59, I have nothing left to prove. At 24, I rode for an audience. I went to work in a god-awful 90s leather jacket. I actually went out with girls because of the bike. Yes, you could actually do that then. At 59, I ride for the road and I don't care what people think of me. That's why I ride a Himalayan. 24 horsepower is enough to get you to the destination, and I don't care if people think it's a terrible bike. When I was a younger rider, I'd ride around the city and that was about it. The trip down to Gundagai on back roads to work on the farm was the first and the last long distance trip I did as a younger rider. At 59, I've ridden hundreds of thousands of kilometres in Australia and tens of thousands in other countries. I love riding distance, and that patience that comes with getting older is essential for that. None of that means I don't feel the fear. I do. But this is how it can end. Just be careful, dudes. I thought it was the best decision until it almost killed me and changed my body forever. But it's not just the danger on the road. It's the danger of how you will change as a person. That's a real fear as an older person. The idea that this person you've spent your whole life becoming disappears, and this unknown person is just plunked down in their place. Life is change, challenge, and that's okay. You've got to keep moving. But change can be scary. You need courage. Sure, I might die riding, but not riding for me is dying little by little, every day, in a safe cocoon. I know I'm not invincible. I know bikes change me every ride. And if you're thinking of returning to bikes or starting late, that's a risk you'll have to deal with. The risk and the life it adds to my days are mine to choose. So who's the unknown bloke who gets plunked down in your place? As it turns out, there's no plunking per se. The change is gradual. You get edited one ride at a time. You do things you didn't do before. You watch the weather. You smell the rain on the tar, the dead kangaroo, the bits you ride through. You purposely choose the slower road. You watch the surface of the tarmac. You watch cars relentlessly, because if they're not actually trying to kill you, they do a damn good impression of it. I get off the bike with a calm head. 40 years of trying and nothing else has ever come close. This unknown bloke isn't exactly a stranger. They're still made out of you, of course, but this person couldn't have existed at 24. Not wouldn't, couldn't. They're built from everything 25 years put into you. There's a thing they drill into you at the course. You go where you look. Stare at the pothole and you'll hit the pothole. Look through the corner and the bike just goes there. I spent a decent chunk of those 25 years staring at exactly what I didn't want. The bike retrains that every single ride. I take the lessons the bike teaches me into other parts of my life. I'm not always successful, but sometimes I am. And when I am, that's what makes motorcycling really worthwhile. The bloke I mentioned at the start, who told me I was irrelevant, I don't know if he was a younger man. I don't even know if he was a man or a rider, come to that. But am I irrelevant? And irrelevant to whom? Well, the industry reckons I am. Look, I run a motorcycle channel that, let's face it, doesn't exactly play the industry game. I bought a cheap, but awesome and new motorcycle 5 years ago and have kept it, and I intend to keep it. The motorcycle industry needs young guys buying 150 horsepower bikes on finance. It keeps the spoke wheels of industry turning. I am more interested in the road than the industry. And the road has no opinions about my age. As long as I ride it well, it'll keep dishing up the miles. I'm irrelevant to the industry because no one's selling stuff to me anymore. And maybe irrelevant's just another word for free. Hey, subscribing's free, by the way. Costs you nothing, gives the industry nothing. That's my kind of transaction. Old and irrelevant. They're half right. And the half they got right is the advantage. But certainly I'm older and maybe wiser than the 24-year-old buffhead on a Kawasaki I was in 1991. And that's the advantage. The best time to ride is when you're older. You're aware of your mortality, you've got nothing to prove to anyone, and you're patient. I'm a better and a safer rider at 59 than I was at 24. And that's because I am an older rider.